The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Gustav Jung. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it and let's get started. Kindness is not a virtue, it is a survival strategy. A behavioral mask shaped not by your freedom, but by fear. It is what the weaker one learns to wear when the stronger one is near. In the wild, submissive animals lower their gaze, roll over, expose their bellies. Not because they trust, but because they calculate. Because a moment of surrender is safer than resistance. This isn't nobility, it's instinct. Human beings are animals too, just more complex ones. From the earliest days of life, the child learns the rules of the emotional jungle. Smiling brings warmth. Crying too long brings cold. Compliance brings love. Rebellion brings distance. Soon enough, the child discovers that being good buys security. Being soft is safer. Being silent is rewarded. But this goodness, it doesn't grow out of the heart. It grows out of fear of abandonment, out of the memory of being too loud, too angry, too alive, and being punished for it. So little by little, the child carves out pieces of themselves. They amputate wildness, bite their tongue, mold their face into a mask. Not because they are good, but because they are scared. And this fear does not vanish with age. It just evolves. It dresses itself in politeness, social intelligence, professionalism. It smiles at strangers, nods at lies, compliments without meaning. The fear adapts, and the person becomes more and more likable, but less and less alive. You don't grow into a good person. You grow into a convenient one who knows how to keep the peace, who doesn't raise their voice, who avoids discomfort, one who lets others step over boundaries without protest, one who serves the system quietly. This is not moral growth. It is behavioral training, rewarded obedience, and it is everywhere. In school, you are taught to raise your hand, sit straight, be patient, not to think freely, but to behave correctly. In religion, you are told to love your enemy, turn the other cheek, accept suffering. In families, you are praised for being easy, not causing trouble, mature. Goodness becomes your currency. The safer you make others feel, the more lovable you appear, and the more you disappear yourself. The cost of this adaptation is immense. Your body remembers every time you swallowed your truth, every time you smiled instead of saying no, every time you let someone speak over you. The nervous system records it all. Muscles tighten, breath shortens, anxiety settles in your gut. The mind begins to believe that its own needs are a threat, that desire is dangerous, that truth will only bring pain. So you become a well-dressed ghost, efficient, polite, safe, but not free. Because you were not born to be kind, you were born to be whole. And wholeness is not always soft. Sometimes it is wild, sometimes it roars, sometimes it says no with fire, sometimes it walks away without explanation. Kindness that grows from strength is beautiful, but kindness that grows from fear is a cage. And most people are trapped in it, smiling behind bars. The world doesn't want you to be truly good. It wants you to be manageable, predictable, controlled, a good citizen, a good employee, a good child, a good partner, a good little machine. And the moment you begin to break out of that, to question, to say no, to stop smiling, they will call you dangerous, difficult, selfish. But that's the price of becoming real. Because behind every good person society celebrates, there is often a quiet scream, a silenced truth, a swallowed life. And behind every truly free person, there's a graveyard of masks they had to bury. They taught you to smile through your own death. They told you that the quiet ones are the strongest, that it's noble to endure, that it's holy to forgive. They never told you that forgiveness without power is not healing, it's erasure. Psychologist Martin Seligman called it learned helplessness. He ran an experiment. Dogs were placed in cages. Some of them received electric shocks. If they had a way to escape, they would run. But if they had no way out, they eventually stopped trying. Even when the door was finally opened, they no longer moved. They had learned that nothing they did mattered. They had internalized powerlessness. Humans are not so different. If a child cries and is ignored, they cry less. If a child gets angry and is punished, they hide their anger. If a child speaks and is silenced, they stop speaking. Over time, they stop reaching for what they need. They become easy, kind, well-behaved. They learn that wanting something is dangerous, that being loud is shameful, that power is unsafe. This is not goodness. This is trauma dressed up in good manners, and this trauma settles into the nervous system. The child who stops protesting becomes the adult who tolerates abuse. The one who never said no becomes the one who cannot say yes to themselves. They apologize for existing. They minimize their own feelings. They accept crumbs and call it a feast. This learned helplessness becomes an identity. You say you are calm when in truth you are numb. You say you are easygoing when in truth you are terrified of rejection. You say you hate conflict when in truth you are addicted to being liked, and society rewards you for it. You become the one who never causes trouble, the one who listens more than speaks, the one who helps, who softens, who soothes. You become a balm for other people's wounds, while bleeding quietly inside your own. But here is the truth no one dares to say. No one will thank you for disappearing. No one will come to rescue the parts of you that you buried. No one will notice your silence until it explodes. Because what you repress doesn't die, it waits. The anger you buried will rise through your skin as eczema, stomach pain, jaw tension. The grief you ignored will choke you at night, waking you with panic. The self you abandoned will start to sabotage your life, choosing toxic people, failing on purpose, collapsing without knowing why. You think you are being good, but your body knows you are being fake, and it cannot carry that lie forever. Goodness that cost you your wholeness is not virtue, it is self-destruction. You think peace is avoiding conflict, but real peace is when your inner world is no longer at war, and that only happens when your truth is allowed to live. When you say no, even if your voice shakes. When you walk away, even if it breaks your heart. When you set boundaries that others don't like, but you know you need. And when you do that, something ancient in you wakes up, something primal, something holy. Your nervous system begins to shift. The learned helplessness starts to unlearn itself. You breathe deeper. You stand taller. You feel heat returning to your chest. Your eyes clear. Your hands steady. You no longer look for safety in being liked. You no longer mistake being needed for being loved. You no longer apologize for needing space or silence or sovereignty. Because you remember now, you were not born to be small. You were not born to make others comfortable. You were born to live fully, to take up space, to speak, to protect yourself, to choose your own way. And when you do, when you begin to walk that path, people will say you've changed, that you're not as nice as you used to be, that you've become hard, cold, selfish. Let them talk. They are mistaking your wholeness for cruelty, because they only ever knew the version of you that sacrificed everything to be loved. And now that you no longer sacrifice, they think you are dangerous. But this is not danger. This is integrity. This is what it looks like when a human being returns to themselves and refuses to leave again. There is something that happens in the body when you betray yourself too often. The silence becomes acidic. The forced smile turns into fatigue. The tension in your chest no longer leaves. You wake up tired. You go to sleep anxious. You try to rest but never feel restored. Because rest does not come from sleep. It comes from safety. And when your entire life is a performance, there is no real safety anywhere. Your brain learns to fear your own truth. The prefrontal cortex, the part of you that manages inhibition, starts to override your primal instincts. Every impulse to say no is filtered, softened, silenced. Over time, this becomes automatic. You don't even notice when you're censoring yourself. It becomes your default setting. But the body does not forget. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and emotional memory, stays active, hypervigilant, alert. You may look calm on the outside, but inside, you are on fire. Your nervous system is running a marathon every day, and slowly it breaks down. It shows up in migraines, digestive issues, chronic fatigue, autoimmune responses. The body starts screaming because the soul has been silenced for too long. This is not weakness. This is biology. The body is not meant to carry the weight of disconnection forever. And yet, most people continue. They push through. They take pills to sleep, to focus, to smile. They go to work. They show up at dinners. They nod at conversations they don't believe in. They maintain the image, because the image is safer than the truth. But the cost is devastating. You begin to lose access to joy, real joy. Not the shallow bursts of dopamine from validation, likes, performance, but the deep cellular joy of being alive in your own skin. That joy only comes when you are congruent, when your inner world matches your outer expression, when your yes means yes and your no means no, when you can look at yourself in the mirror without flinching. And to reach that, you must walk through fire. You must start telling the truth, not the polite truth, not the safe truth, the real truth. The truth that breaks illusions, that shatters relationships built on convenience, that upsets dynamics where you played the savior, the caretaker, the one who holds it all together. The truth that reclaims your voice. And that truth is not always spoken. Sometimes it's a silence, a distance, a door that doesn't open anymore, a conversation that never happens again. Sometimes the most radical act of love is withdrawal. Because love without respect is not love, it's dependency. And respect begins with self-respect, with the decision to no longer participate in what hurts you, no matter how beautiful the story looks from the outside. This is when your life begins to shift. You stop chasing people who do not see you. You stop explaining your worth. You stop performing for acceptance. You begin to move differently, with more stillness, with more certainty, with more space between your yes and your answer. And in that space, you find yourself. Not the self that others praised, not the self that got approval, but the raw, untamed, honest self. The one who feels deeply. The one who says too much. The one who walks away. The one who scares people because they no longer abandon themselves to be loved. This is the rebirth. And it is not always pretty. People will leave. Structures will collapse. The life you built on pleasing others may fall apart, but what remains is real. What remains is solid, because it is not built on fear, it is built on truth. You begin to create new relationships, ones where power is shared, not hoarded, where honesty is valued more than politeness, where boundaries are honored, not punished, where you are not worshipped, but witnessed. This is the architecture of freedom, and it begins with discomfort, with grief, with the unbearable weight of being misunderstood. But it ends in peace, because you no longer live in pieces. You no longer fracture yourself to fit. You no longer abandon your needs for the illusion of harmony. You no longer dilute your fire just to keep others warm. You become whole. And in that wholeness, something extraordinary happens. Your body begins to heal. Your sleep deepens. Your breath slows. Your gaze sharpens. Your voice returns. You walk differently, not faster, not louder, just clearer, more rooted, more you. You are no longer afraid of your own truth. And because of that, no one can use it against you anymore. The world may not know what to do with this version of you. That's okay. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to remember yourself. And now, you have begun. The system is not built for free people. It is built for obedient ones, smiling ones. Ones who do not speak unless asked, who do not move unless told, who do not question the frame they are trapped inside. From the moment you are born, you are conditioned to fit, to mold yourself, to suppress discomfort, to adapt. And so you do. You smile when you're scared. You laugh when you're ashamed. You apologize for things that were never your fault. You shrink. And the more you shrink, the more praise you receive. What a good boy. What a sweet girl. So polite. So well behaved. But there is a cost to this performance. Every act of self-erasure writes a code in your nervous system, a quiet, invisible law that says, my truth is dangerous, my needs are shameful, my presence is too much. These laws govern your entire life. You choose jobs that keep you small. You stay in relationships that mirror your original wound. You chase dreams that are safe, not sacred. You speak in ways that sound acceptable, even if your soul is screaming. You forget how to be wild, how to be loud, how to be real. And still the world tells you, you're doing great. Because the world does not want your authenticity, it wants your compliance. Look closely at the structures around you. Schools, offices, churches, social media. None of them reward rawness. None of them reward truth. They reward performance, predictability, clean lines, smooth delivery. The corporate world prefers the agreeable employee over the passionate one. The school system rewards memorization over imagination. Families, often broken themselves, want you to conform, not evolve. Even spiritual communities can become cages if questioning is not allowed. And so you adapt. You dress the part. You speak the language. You become fluent in pretending. But something inside you stays unsettled. That's the part they couldn't kill. That's your fire. That fire doesn't want you to be good. It wants you to be whole, to break the rules if they don't serve you, to walk away if staying cost you your soul, to be willing to disappoint others rather than abandon yourself. This is not rebellion for the sake of drama. This is reclamation of your body, your boundaries, your breath. And yes, people will react. The moment you stop playing the game, you threaten those who are still inside it. You become a mirror, and not everyone wants to see their reflection. Some will call you arrogant, others will say you've changed. Some will try to pull you back with guilt, shame, manipulation, but you will see through it. Because once you've tasted your own truth, nothing else satisfies, and the more you reclaim, the more power returns. You speak without permission, you move without apology, you stand without explanation. This is not the power of domination. It is the power of alignment. Your inner and outer self become one. There is no longer a gap between what you feel and what you express. No more pretending. No more adjusting your volume to make others comfortable. No more betrayal of the sacred within you. At first, this power feels dangerous because you've been taught that your fire will burn bridges, ruin relationships, destroy the peace. But what kind of peace is worth keeping if it requires you to die inside? The truth is, you were never meant to live a life of quiet desperation. You were never meant to perform normality while your soul rots in the shadows. You were meant to be alive, to be seen, to be heard, to be felt, fully. And when you start to live like that, something else happens. You attract differently. Not just people, but opportunities, energies, moments. People who once needed your weakness to feel strong disappear. People who only loved you when you were useful grow distant. The fake begins to fall away, and what remains is real. You begin to meet others like you, people who have walked through their own fire, who don't flinch at your truth, who don't ask you to be less, who see your boundaries and honor them, who challenge you with love, not control, who nourish your freedom, not fear your power. And now, for the first time, connection becomes nourishment, not a transaction. This is the beginning of sovereign relationship, of conscious community, not based on control, but on clarity, not on need, but on presence. You are no longer the one who saves everyone. You are no longer the one who bleeds to keep others warm. You are no longer the one who bends until they break. You are the one who stays centered, who speaks clearly, who chooses wisely. And that kind of person cannot be manipulated, because manipulation only works on those who seek approval. You no longer do. And so, the games end. The performances dissolve. The chains fall away. You are not good. You are not bad. You are whole. And in that wholeness, there is peace deeper than anything obedience ever gave you. You will lose people. That is the price of truth. That is the cost of shedding your false skin. The moment you stop being the convenient version of yourself, the architecture of your life begins to crack. Not because you are breaking anything, but because it was never built to hold your fullness. It was built to hold your silence, your compliance, your self-betrayal. And when that betrayal ends, the undoing begins. Some will distance themselves quietly. Others will accuse. Some will mourn the version of you that always said yes, that never challenged, that smiled through discomfort, that bent to avoid conflict, that loved without boundaries. But you are no longer available for that role. You do not abandon yourself for belonging anymore. You do not make yourself small to protect others from their own shadows. You do not confuse love with sacrifice. Because you understand now, real love does not require your extinction. The grief comes in waves, not just for the people you lose, but for the years you spent being half alive, for the words you never said, for the pain you silenced, for the energy you gave to places that never saw you. This grief is sacred. Let it burn. Let it cleanse. Let it teach you how to mourn the old without dragging it into the new, because something else is waiting. On the other side of that fire is a life that fits you, not because you forced it to, but because you finally stopped forcing yourself to fit into what never did. This is where your body begins to thaw, where your intuition becomes louder than your fear, where you no longer second-guess your knowing, where you don't explain your boundaries, you live them. You move differently now, not with urgency, but with clarity, not with defensiveness, but with rootedness, not with aggression, but with presence. People notice. Some are drawn closer, others move away. Let both happen. You are not here to be universally liked. You are here to be real. And the more real you become, the more your life becomes a mirror, reflecting back the parts of you that once hid, the parts that now stand tall, the parts that say yes with an open heart and no without guilt. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-performing. You stop begging for scraps of attention and start offering yourself the feast of your own presence. This is self-relationship, the ground of everything. Because when you trust yourself, truly trust yourself, your entire orientation shifts. You no longer chase safety outside. You become it. You walk into rooms, knowing who you are, not hoping to be told. You hold your own gaze in the mirror without shrinking. You rest in your own energy without needing distraction. And this self-trust becomes a compass. It tells you who to move toward, who to step back from, what feels nourishing, what feels draining. You no longer abandon your knowing to keep the peace, because your inner peace has become the priority. Not comfort, not validation, not agreement. Peace. That deep, undeniable stillness that comes when you no longer argue with your own soul. And when this peace anchors you, something else happens. You begin to express yourself more honestly, not to provoke, not to persuade, just to be. Your words become cleaner, your boundaries firmer, your energy clearer. People feel it. They feel that you are no longer entangled, that you no longer need them to behave a certain way for you to be okay, that you no longer perform. And in this space, only real connection survives. Surface-level dynamics fall away, performative friendships dissolve, codependent bonds lose their grip. What remains is presence, depth, mutuality. There is room now for truth, for silence, for conflict that leads to clarity instead of collapse. You are no longer afraid of losing people who cannot meet you, because you are no longer losing yourself to meet them. This is the root of mature love, not attachment, not possession, not performance, but freedom. Two whole people choosing to walk beside each other, not to complete each other, not to save each other, but to witness each other, to grow together, not from lack, but from overflow. And when you live from this place, the world begins to look different, quieter, sharper, less full, but more true. You are no longer drowning in noise. You are listening to your own rhythm. You are no longer chasing life. You are inhabiting it, fully, raw, unapologetic. Not because you've become someone else, but because you finally come home to the one you've always been. When you stop being good, you begin the process of psychological integration. That means reuniting the parts of yourself you've exiled to maintain social harmony. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the suppressed self, shaped by guilt, shame, fear, and rejection. It contains your aggression, your ambition, your sexuality, your rage, all the energy you learned to fear because it was labeled as dangerous. But the shadow is not your enemy. It is your vitality, corrupted by repression, and without it, you are incomplete. Most people don't live from wholeness. They live from fragments, from personas, from roles learned in childhood. The pleaser, the helper, the quiet one, the achiever. These roles are adaptations, not identities. They are responses to a world that punishes authenticity, and the longer you stay in them, the more distant you become from your core self. When you abandon your aggression, you lose your boundaries. When you abandon your sadness, you lose your depth. When you abandon your anger, you lose your fire. Over time, this creates a hollowed-out self, externally functional, internally numb. A person who gets things done, shows up on time, smiles when needed, but feels chronically empty. This emptiness isn't a flaw, it's a signal. It tells you that your aliveness has been exiled. The nervous system is not designed for lifelong self-abandonment. When you suppress emotions, the limbic system becomes dysregulated. Cortisol levels rise, serotonin drops, your immune system weakens. You develop chronic inflammation, digestive disorders, tension syndromes, not because you're weak, but because the body can't keep pretending. Trauma isn't just what happens to you, it's what happens inside you when you are forced to deny your truth to survive. Restoring that truth is a biological necessity. The integration of the shadow is not about acting on every impulse. It's about meeting the inner reality without judgment. Allowing yourself to feel anger without becoming destructive. To feel sadness without collapsing. To feel desire without shame. This is what maturity looks like. Not suppression, but regulation. The capacity to hold your own complexity without needing to hide it. This process requires psychological reparenting. You become the witness to your own wounds. You learn to offer presence to parts of you that were once silenced. You stop demanding perfection from yourself and start listening to the unmet needs behind your behaviors. Most of what you call flaws are simply defense mechanisms. Overeating, overworking, pleasing, procrastinating. These are not character failures. They are pain management strategies. And they dissolve not through discipline, but through compassion. Once you begin this work, your nervous system recalibrates. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, becomes your ally. You build new pathways through repetition, safety, self-expression. You replace internalized criticism with internal support. Over time, your self-concept shifts. You are no longer someone performing to be loved. You are someone who knows they are worthy, regardless of external approval. This changes everything. You stop seeking validation from systems that thrive on your insecurity. You stop comparing your worth to metrics that have nothing to do with aliveness. You stop editing your truth to remain acceptable. Because now, your sense of self is rooted in reality, not in the reactions of others. This shift also affects your relationships. Once you embody wholeness, codependency dissolves. You no longer attract people who need you to stay small. You no longer tolerate dynamics based on guilt, obligation, or control. Love becomes a space of freedom, not fusion, of mutual growth, not mutual wounding. You recognize that real intimacy is not found in merging, but in meeting. Two separate, sovereign beings, connected through choice, not need. This is not a comfortable path. It is not clean. It is not linear. You will be misunderstood. You will be labeled difficult. You will outgrow entire communities. But that loss is sacred, because what dies is illusion. What remains is truth. And truth is the foundation of all sustainable transformation. You do not need to be liked to be whole. You do not need to be agreeable to be safe. You do not need to be useful to be worthy. Your value is intrinsic, not transactional. This awareness is your liberation. And when you live from this place, something extraordinary happens. Not externally, but internally. Your body begins to trust you. Your emotions stop screaming. Your mind quiets. You no longer wake up with dread. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You feel, with certainty, that you are on your own side. And that is the beginning of true power. Power is not control over others. It's coherence within yourself. When your thoughts, feelings, and actions align, you become immovable, not rigid, not defensive, but anchored. The world can storm around you, and you remain intact, because your center is no longer up for negotiation. This is what happens when you stop being good. You do not become bad. You become real. You become free. You become whole. When you integrate your shadow, you don't just gain access to repressed emotions. You reclaim your psychological agency. Agency is the internal experience of being the author of your own life. Without it, you live in reaction, to fear, to guilt, to expectation. With it, you begin to choose. Psychologically, most people are not choosing. They are reenacting, carrying scripts handed down through trauma, conditioning, and survival. These scripts live in the subconscious and emerge as default responses. Say yes to avoid conflict. Stay silent to avoid judgment. Please to avoid rejection. These behaviors once served a function. They protected you, but now they keep you stuck. Agency begins when you recognize that those scripts are not you. They are adaptations, and you can rewrite them. This is where neuroscience meets self-inquiry. The brain is a prediction machine. It uses past experience to anticipate outcomes. If your past taught you that truth leads to punishment, your body will brace every time you try to speak honestly. If love once meant self-abandonment, you will flinch when someone offers you space. These are not character flaws. They are prediction loops, and they can be updated. The key is awareness plus safety. You notice the old pattern, and instead of reacting, you pause. You breathe. You ask yourself, is this response rooted in the present or in the past? Is this truth or trauma? From that space, you choose differently. And every time you choose presence over programming, you reshape your internal map. Therapists call this repatterning. Over time, the nervous system learns that expression is no longer dangerous, that boundaries are not betrayal, that saying no does not mean losing love. This is not an intellectual process. It is embodied. You practice, you stumble, you repair, and your system begins to trust itself again. That trust is everything. When you trust your inner signals, you stop outsourcing authority. You stop asking others to tell you who you are. You stop seeking rules, gurus, or approval to validate your path. You begin to live from within. This inner authority is subtle but unmistakable. It shows up in the way you make decisions, not from fear, but from clarity. In the way you speak, without over-explaining. In the way you rest, without guilt. You are no longer proving. You are simply being. And here's what's most liberating. You no longer need the world to reflect your worth. You already feel it. This dissolves comparison, jealousy, resentment. You celebrate others without abandoning yourself. You hold space without absorbing their chaos. You give without depleting. You love without losing center. This is not perfection. It is integration. It is the quiet revolution of becoming undivided. And from this place, kindness returns, but not the old kind, rooted in fear or obligation. This new kindness has strength in its spine. It has discernment. It is not afraid to say no. It does not martyr itself. It does not shrink. This kindness is fierce. It protects what matters. It includes you in its circle of care. It gives without losing itself. It is not about being liked. It is about being aligned. And so you walk through the world differently, not above anyone, not below, simply whole. And that wholeness is felt, not because you perform it, but because you embody it. No longer good, now real, now free, now home. We're sure you've discovered plenty of value, so subscribe now and stay connected.